Good evening, everybody. I'm Joe Dela Cruz. This is Born Political. Have a great show planned for tonight. Missed last week. You guys all know that I'm also a state representative. Although I'm not running, I am still your state representative until January. So we have some business to take care of. I got stuck in some Zoom meetings last week. Unfortunately, I couldn't do it. But we're here this week anyhow. My guest tonight is somebody that you may or may not know around town. If you follow economic development at all, if you're reading the papers about what's going on in around town in Groton, I'm sure you've read his name in the paper. I'm sure you've got to see him at some of the meetings. I'm just going to get right to it because we have a lot to talk about tonight. My guest tonight, Paige Bronk. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you, Joe.
Good, great. So the premise of my show is, and I talk to over and over, I feel like I'm repeating it at each show, but it has to do with getting rid of the title of what you do and getting to the bottom of who you are. And I think when we find out who people are, and I said it before, we've interviewed a few guests now. I'm about 8 or 9 people into the show, and invariably I'll get an email or a text from somebody saying, you know, I wasn't fond of that person, but after seeing them be interviewed and kind of understanding who they are and where they came from, I actually enjoyed it, and I connected to that person. So it's not what we have to do. It's not what we're looking to do is make people like people. I just want you to know who they are. So Paige, starting off, where are you from? Where'd you grow up? Are you local or?
Well, I think of myself as local. I grew up in Massachusetts. New England.
Local.
New England's a fairly small place. I grew up in Ipswich, Mass.
Okay.
Coastal community, colonial, similar to Groton.
Yeah.
Small, roughly 12,000 people right on the coast.
Small town.
Yeah. So I've always done a lot of boating and beaching, and nice area. So it's also referred to as the other Cape.
It is.
Cape Ann rather than Cape Cod.
Okay, but 12,000. So I'm guessing then that's probably triple or quadruple that once the summer hits. Is it a summer community or is it?
Definitely, there's an influx.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of the beach.
And then, like your high school, is it that small school, small?
Oh yeah, definitely small.
Yeah, I went to New London. I graduated with, I think, 93 kids.
Yeah.
New London's gotten bigger student-wise since I went there. They've done such a good job over there that we have kids that are leaving Old Lyme to go to New London now, leaving Groton, and they've done a great job over there. But when I tell people I graduated with 93 kids, they're like, "Where'd you go to school? Fisher's Island or something?" So was your class that small, or was it?
It was actually, I finished my high school actually at an independent school. I graduated with 62 students. 62 so I beat you on the size.
All right.
Yeah.
And then I asked this question. You got mom and dad in the house. Was in this Born Political, but was it a political house? Did you know? I don't even know if my father was Democrat or Republican to this day. He won't tell me. He has no. But was it?
So my parents had me when they were quite young, and
Okay.
so basically they grew up. I'll say they grew up as hippies, and free-spirited, independent.
Yep.
And so a lot of open conversations, never really talked about politics,
Yep.
talked about principle, what was right or wrong, and what they were upset about. Of course, I was born in the mid-'60s, so the Vietnam era tend to set the stage for the household when I was a kid.
I think that, and it's funny because that was a very political conversation, but it was pointed just at that.
Yes.
I don't think they were talking economics or if you were for the war, against the war, that's where your politics were back in those days. And I think, I was a Vietnam era baby. My dad was in the service, but he actually drew the lucky straw. He was in, my brother was born in Texas and then I was in Germany. Okay. So he never saw Vietnam. So I think he got lucky there, but he had a lot of friends, and my mother's pretty, adamant about what that war meant to them at that time.
Right.
And I'm sure you heard the same conversations I heard probably growing up.
Definitely, yeah.
So brothers and sisters?
No, I'm actually an only child.
Only child?
Yeah.
My wife's the only child. Do you have that disease or? No, honey, I'm kidding. You don't have that. You're perfect, babe.
It has its pros and cons.
Yeah,
you know. Maybe there's certain opportunities, but when you grow up, you don't necessarily have the same exposure to brothers or sisters.
Yep. Now, other than that, did you have a big family? You have cousins or?
Actually, I would say my family's relatively small. I have cousins
Yeah.
But we're a pretty tight-knit group, not a large family at all.
See, I think in the born political part of this is where I think you're completely shaped on a lot of times the size of your family, your brothers and sisters, my political chops started when I was probably 8, because my brother's 2 years older and my sister was 4 years younger.
Yeah.
And my brother would just, anything he'd do to get her to cry, like to mess with her. And I was just like, stop. And I didn't understand it, but politically starting off, you're looking for reasons. And now you're going up against 2 grown adults when you're politically trying to do something, because it's mom and dad.
Right.
All the negotiations happening with 2 adults. And I think the only children that I see, and I have some in my family now, my nephew, he's light years ahead of where I was as far as his speech and the way he talks and speaks, because he's not talking
Right.
like a kid. He's talking like an adult.
Interesting enough, my mom has always run a home-based daycare facility.
Oh, so you were around kids then?
Yeah, in a strange way, I was around kids, but they weren't my relatives.
Oh, okay.
And she started that when I was born. And so basically, there were always kids around,
Yep.
but they weren't my brothers or sisters.
All right. So you weren't isolated. Sometimes my wife still said, and it's funny because my son and daughter would fight and argue, and my wife just could not wrap her head around it. She's thinking, I wished I had a brother and sister to play with when I was. You don't understand how lucky you guys are. And when I would explain to her that, oh no, the wishing is good, but there are rough times with a brother and sister. It's just the way it works. You fight and you argue, but you love them too. And I think that it's something that you miss. You think you miss because you didn't have it. But when you have it, you realize that nothing's all sunshine.
I've learned that in talking to other friends.
Yep.
Also, my wife has a lot of brothers, and I said, I missed that opportunity. And a lot of people have informed me. They said it wasn't all great.
No.
Appreciate the ability to not necessarily fight with all your brothers or sisters.
Yeah, right. So then you graduate from the small high school.
Yes.
Sounds like, and then off to college right away.
Yeah, straight to college.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to Alfred University out in Western New York.
Okay.
It's about 2 hours south of Buffalo, and
so you went to see what the cold felt like.
I thought I knew what cold was in Massachusetts. No idea.
Oh yeah, it's cold that way.
But my interests were environmental studies and geology, and that's what I studied for 4 years.
Okay.
And then went straight from there back to New England. Went to URI, grad school in urban planning and development, and then wrapped it up from there.
And what got you? Was your dad a planner, or somebody in your?
No, my dad was an artist.
Artist.
I think I was always, actually there was this pivotal moment in my head that actually drove me in that direction. We would drive off over the Tobin Bridge when I was a kid, and we'd be stuck in the traffic.
Yeah.
And I was interested in the city. At that time, there would be a lot of air pollution coming across the Tobin Bridge, and I kind of got fascinated by cities, development, and the environment at that point.
How old were you then? You think when you were a kid and you thought that way? Or?
I'm in the back seat. I was probably 5.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I think we had a police officer on a couple of weeks ago, and his father wasn't a police officer, but his father owned a business in town, and police would come in all the time and chat him up, and he just thought, he just got this bond with him, and you kind of thought, or your parents, someone's talking about environment, maybe in the car, maybe you're thinking I could change that.
Yeah.
I could do something about that and plan it.
Right.
So when you graduated high school, you took geology and those courses, thinking ahead that did you think you wanted to be a town planner, or
no,
was that something?
No, actually, for my undergraduate, I knew I was interested in the environment, but I didn't really know what that would go towards. And then when I was exiting college, I realized there's actually a community development type program.
Okay.
Where you can start to shape a community. That's when I became a little more focused on that front.
So then you graduate from Rhode Island, and is your first job up in Rhode Island, or is it down our way, or?
No, I basically moved to Georgia. I moved to
Okay, so that was your
Georgia.
first. We talked off air. That was your first.
Yeah.
Okay, down to Savannah, you said.
Yeah, so in the early 90s, that's when I came out of grad school. The economy was tough. I wasn't exactly sure where I was going to work, and I landed a job coastal Georgia, and I figured, well, I'll just go down there for a year or two, see how it goes, and I was there longer than anticipated.
How long were you down there for?
I was down there for about 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I told you off air that I love Savannah. I've never been to Savannah. I was thinking of Charleston,
Okay.
South Carolina.
They're sister cities.
They are, right?
Yeah.
Someone said that if you've been to one, you kind of been to both.
Right.
A lot of the architecture is the same, the year that it was built. A lot of things similar, but not the same. So I had to correct myself because I thought about it after you said it again. I said I've never been there.
Yeah.
We actually installed something down that way. So I had never seen the city up until like I think 2 years ago, and I actually fell in love with it too. I think it's a great place. So
Yeah.
So your first job and your first experience, and we talked off air a little bit about it, and the process and of doing things, just because politically it's different. We're made differently up here than they are in the Northeast. We have these little sections of government, and they're more county, I think, or more local control. So
Definitely. I think when you're born and raised in New England, you don't realize it, but you're taught that things are a certain way and they're supposed to be a certain way. When you move away and you see how it's done elsewhere, it's eye-opening, definitely.
Yeah.
And we could talk about this forever, but it's
Yeah.
more about home rule governance. People are quite proud about their independence, and they believe that if they come up with an idea, it should be implemented locally.
Yeah.
So, yeah, certain planning concepts would be developed, and they would be approved, and they would be implemented almost immediately.
Yeah.
Whereas in New England, it's common. You have an idea, and it may take a while to get something done.
I think in New England, you have an idea, but there's probably 25 conflicting ideas, or not the ones that don't go in the same direction, and it ends up going through a lot more channels up here. And that's, I think we talked off air about this too. I think there's probably some happy medium,
Right.
where I think the state, obviously, I'm sure Georgia has their own their plan of conservation development statewide.
Yes.
And then locally, but it sounds like the local kind of can overrule on a lot of different, a variety of different reasons. Where up here, I think you have to come in front of us at the legislature to get an approval for or land swap, or where that probably doesn't happen as much probably in Georgia.
Yeah, that's correct. Even at the local level, it doesn't require as much state sanctioning. Home rule in Georgia is more about local control.
Yeah.
Home rule in New England's more, you can do it as long as the state says you can do it.
Yeah. So in 5 years, you've got to, I think if you're there for 5 years, there's probably an eternity in a place where when you ask for and get something done and see progress like next day, like you don't get the satisfaction up here of that. I know the satisfaction sometimes up here is saying, my God, we got through those 3 committees. We came over the top of the mountain, and here we are, and we're getting the thing built. Down there, so now you're 5 years down there, and you're used to a certain way, which is completely different of up here.
Right.
Did you feel? I mean, no matter what job you have, that quick success, I think, trains you to feel like, okay, this is how it is everywhere, and that's not really the case.
Yeah, I mean, I learned to respect local systems and governance, but it is frustrating, I suppose, when you know how things can work in different locations.
Yeah.
Before I made it back to New England, I was actually outside of Lexington, Kentucky. I worked there for a number of years, and they have a different system. But when you can see something work efficiently, collaboratively with the public, and you move things along, it is sometimes difficult to see getting bogged down in bureaucracy.
Yeah. So Lexington was another planning.
Yes.
So planning job for like a city of Lexington.
Well, a city of Frankfort, Kentucky, which is right outside of Lexington, capital of Kentucky.
Yeah. And how long were you there for?
2 years.
2 years there, and then after that made you move back towards
I
New
moved
England?
back to Newport, Rhode Island.
Oh, Newport. And were you working for Newport, or were you?
Yeah, it was for a job. I was the director of planning, zoning, development for the city of Newport for 12 years.
I guess I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I knew you were Kingston. Is that considered the same?
No, North Kingstown is where Quonset is in Rhode
Yeah, yeah.
Island.
Okay.
But EB, but no, Newport is separate.
So Newport, now you've gone from Georgia to Lexington. Now you're in Newport. Now you're getting that New England feel. And I know I obviously is a very historic district. It's on the water. There's not a lot of places to build. There's not that aren't built already.
Right.
There's a lot of folks concentrating on the environment. I know now in that area. So that's a different beast altogether. But it must have been exciting. I mean, it also is one of the most coveted places on earth.
Right.
When you're thinking of sailing and.
Yeah, I think I'm always open to learn. And one of the things I learned from Newport was redevelopment, adaptive reuse of properties. So all of these school buildings kept coming my way, former school buildings.
Yep.
So do something with them. And I started that in the early 2000s. That's how I became interested in a lot of redevelopment. And honestly, probably where I made the transition from traditional planning to economic development.
Yep. And now that, of all positions to me, it ends up becoming political somewhat because you find yourself in front of zoning boards, which are appointed and voted on positions. You find yourself in front of councils. So now there's a little bit of maneuvering. Things that you do and say will end up or in the paper or on the wherever.
Yeah.
So now it's there's a lot of thought that has to go into something like that. So, school empties in the middle of Newport, and the neighbors have one idea for it, but then outside that neighborhood they have this other idea.
Oh, definitely.
And then it's how do you get all those opinions together? And that's what I actually love about our process is that there are so many opinions, ideas. I used to think that my idea was the only idea that mattered. It's like I have the perfect plan for this, but when you see a bunch of people throw some input into it, it ends up being a better plan a lot of times. It's just cutting through all that red tape of getting everyone together. And I think it's a skill that takes a long time to develop. And I think you developed a lot of that in probably Newport first and being in other places before you landed here in Groton.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. We still haven't. I haven't perfected it. No doubt, I'll admit.
There is no perfecting dealing with people.
Nope.
That's the one thing. That's the one thing I can say for sure. It doesn't really matter. My joke to everyone is if I put a picture, and being a state representative, if I put a picture up on my Facebook of puppies, I can guarantee you this, that there would be an awful lot of people saying how cute, but there would be 5 or 10 people that would say, why? Why did you put these puppies? First of all, the puppy is ugly, or the puppy is, or the puppy came from a pet store, and you shouldn't be, whatever, for whatever reason, there's always going to be critics. And I think, I hope you know how I feel. When I was on the council when you came in.
Yeah.
And I'm as excited as I was when we hired you, because I see your vision, and I know that it's always moving, and I know it can be frustrating sometimes getting through the red tape, but seeing how you're dealing with it and how you've gotten through to where we are, it's just this, bringing everybody in, letting people understand, and then pushing forward. And I think that's definitely probably not what you expected when you were 5 years old sitting in the back of that car thinking that I could change the world.
Definitely not. But strangely, as a planner, when I was younger, I would think you could actually control where you're going to be in the future. At my point in life, I don't believe that anymore. Yeah. I believe that we can plan certain things, but other things are more or less destiny.
Yep.
Remarried this past year.
Oh, congratulations.
I have 2 children of my own, and she has 2 children. Like you said, when I was 5 years old, if you had a crystal ball and you could guess where you're going to be, I would have never married. I would never have guessed I would have been married twice. And things happen, and you have to believe that certain things happen for a reason.
They do. I mean, I've come to that point in my life too. It's funny that just what you said is, when I lost my son, and it was very public, and there were people that came up to me that had no idea who I was, but knew me from the tragedy.
Yeah.
And they would come up to me in line, and I was really struggling at one point, just struggling, and waiting in line for my egg sandwich at Bagel 511. They're not here anymore. They were my favorite place. But the guy came up to me and said, he said, I see you, I see your wife's post, and I know how sad you guys are, and I know how devastating it is. And he said, but the one thing you got to remember, and because he had lost somebody, a cousin at a young age, and the guy came up to him and told him that, you can't control anything, and a lot of us have the need to have control of things, and you don't really have it.
Yeah.
He said, the only thing you can really control in life is what you're having for dinner. And there's really a chance that you don't make it to dinner.
Right.
And when you can feel, and when you can actually release and understand that, and not, and I think a lot of people need to hear that these days because there's so much going on in the world. There's divisiveness in here, but then we have this war on the other side of the world. And sometimes you have to understand what you can control and what you can't. And I can control going to my grandson's, if he's doing something, I can control going to that. And those are the things that I can do. We also can do things by speaking up and making sure that we're being the positive change we want to be in the world. But for the most part, you have to, and it's not negative. Some people will take that and go, oh my God, the world's in us. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that because you never could control it in history.
Well, it somewhat is freeing as well when you get to that point. If you've had certain challenges in your life and you're able to get past that and you wake up every day and you you value the small things and you're comfortable knowing you don't control everything, it actually provides a lot of relaxation.
Yeah.
It helps. When you see what's happening in the world, Ukraine and everything else, and you realize, I can control this day.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
It is. It is. And to be a planner, I think the opposite of the attitude that you have to get to, because being a planner, I think, there's a lot of control involved. When you're first going to school, you're thinking, okay, I can draw all this on paper.
Oh yeah.
And God, if this all went just the way I wanted to, because it's easy to draw things on paper. It's easy to say that we should put it, like, I've always thought a train that went straight from the East Coast to the West Coast in an absolute straight line would be wonderful. But there's a lot of people's property in between there and natural resources and all these different things that we have to navigate. And, things that look great on paper, they don't always pan out well. So, but for me, especially for a planner, when you think about it, you're coming up with these ideas, and then all of a sudden, you got people coming out, and some are hitting them with sledgehammers. Some people love the idea, and then you have others that are like, it's not such a good idea. Where are you from, Mars?
Right.
But it takes, you have to have no ego. I think when you're planning, I see that over. You have to have zero ego when you're a politician too. Everyone says, "Oh, politicians don't care." That's not the ones I've met. So I think it's definitely one of those cases where you have to be able to take some hits and some bruises.
Yeah, you grow some thick skin pretty quickly.
So we haven't even talked about Groton yet.
Yeah.
We only have 6 minutes left, and we haven't really talked about Groton because again, the show is about you, and I learned a lot tonight. But yeah, we got 5 minutes left. It looks like just about. So there are a lot of good, exciting things happening. I know EB. If you're driving over the bridge and you see that, to me, that when I see something like that, it means jobs, it means tax base, it means a lot of different positive things. And how do you grow off of that? I think the last time, we went through this boom before when Pfizer had their own 15 or 20,000 people. EB had 30.
Right.
And I think we were just kind of on cruise control. And when I was in the council and we hired you, I think that's what we were saying. Okay, let's make sure that we accept what this is, but expand where we can and revitalize the town in certain spots. So, and everything I've seen you doing has been great. But are there any upcoming things that you can think of that? I know there's some school stuff that you probably can't. I know there's a bunch of empty school buildings that you kind of walked into too.
So, yeah, we only have a couple of minutes, but we actually look at economic development as more a balanced approach. And I think, some people may think of it as the next big Pfizer, the next big EB. I mean, what communities in the country have strong, bookended businesses like that? Not many.
No.
Not many. we look at trying to diversify. You know, you need the tourism, you need mystics to survive. It's not about one thing. What concerns me, actually, is that we still have not done enough to diversify. So I know that's been a concern of others. I think we've pushed the blue economy, which is really important. So it's not, yes, Groton's the submarine capital of the world, but we're bigger than that.
Yeah.
You know, we have Thayer Mahan growing in town. We need to be the epicenter of this blue economy. That will diversify and give us strength over time. Even the latest big discussion about data centers, and I don't want to get too deep into that, but let's just say technology as an emerging industry. I think it makes sense to embrace certain technologies or industries that we haven't done historically, so that over time, if one goes down, the other one's growing, we balance things out. We don't want to be dominant in one area, which leaves us vulnerable.
We've done that before.
Yeah.
And that's what I think we were excited. And I don't want to say it was completely dormant, but when EB and Pfizer were both rolling, it was just, you know, hey, don't do anything. Don't do anything to disrupt the good flow. And in the end, we weren't planning for our future.
Right.
And I think that's what you're talking about, and I think that's what we need to do. And you know, again, get through those layers. I think you know, Groton is very sensitive when it comes to anything. If there's building or if there's an empty space around town, you know, there's going to be a million opinions on it. But I think what most people forget and don't understand, and being on the council, I did, when they wanted to build a movie theater on the old Williams Sealy property. The guy had a movie theater planners, and people, a movie theater won't make it. And it's not ever our business to speculate whether someone's going to make it or not make it, because the people that are investing in that movie theater, they did this big study on how many cars went by and how many would see all this. They also included the Navy base and the amount of young folks. Then they had the staff. How many people would likely carry a Velcro wallet compared to a regular billfold? And I'm like, what are they doing? And that's what it was. It was, yes, people that carry Velcro wallets watch movies.
Right.
But they really dug down. So I never think I'm going to come up with the next idea. It's not my money, it's their money, and sometimes they're the ones.
We don't judge EB and saying, you don't need to expand your building. How many nuclear submarines are you going to build? Or we don't say to Pfizer, you don't need to grow. How many drugs are you going to produce? It's up to the market, and we have to trust those people that there's a demand for that.
Yep.
And I think the same is with emerging technology or industries.
Or a builder. Somebody comes in.
Exactly.
It always comes down to return on investment. It always has. It always will.
Right.
It's always going to come to, does it make sense for them to invest in that building, in that property?
Right.
And it's the balance. And I'm not saying that we let people run roughshod over us, but we have to understand there's a definite balance on how that works. All right, guys, that's the end of the show. I want to thank you for being on the show. I told you the half hour would go by fast. We'll see you next week on Born Political. Thank you very much. See you next Thursday.
Thanks,
Thank
Joe.
you, brother. Fast half.